Hello, innovative teachers. In today's episode, we're talking about Hour of Code. The Hour of Code is here, and we'll be sharing some of our favorite activities that have been successful in our classroom and also ideas for you if you're teaching remotely and why we feel it's important to teach. Also, if you're already loving our podcast, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. This helps spread the word to other innovative teachers who would love to connect to our community. Stay tuned for a great episode full of lots of useful information. We can't wait to learn and code with you.
Hey, innovative teachers, we're so glad that you guys are here. We hope you're hanging in there. You're doing well. You're drinking all the hot cocoa. Even if you live in a warm state, we hope you're doing okay. So we're very excited about this topic. Some of you might have heard about it before, or maybe you forgot about it with everything going on, but we're going to talk about the Hour of Code. And if you aren't familiar with it, just a quick little background. It's a way to celebrate Computer Science Education Week, and it's hosted by code.org, and it's typically in December. So this year, the official week is December 7th through 13th, but you can definitely celebrate at any time. I'm actually going to be celebrating in January, just based on how my units and everything worked out this year. And it's still just as effective, just as fun and engaging for all the kids. I know that even the teachers who were in my classroom before me, they did Hour of Code. And as a classroom teacher, I did Hour of Code. So it really is for everybody. Anybody can be involved. I know that probably your kids get excited as well, Spencer, at your school. They probably ask about it every year.
Oh, and it seems like every year I get more and more kids on code.org, which we're going to talk about. Is a great website, but then they're always like what excited about, because they always come out with something new for Hour of Code. Like, what are they going to do this year? What's, kind of what are they concentrating on as far as the concepts is always cool to see. And the kids are always really excited. So I think it's a great resource to have. I always tell all the teachers in my building about it. And there's always some every year that get more and more excited. It seems to be like a snowball effect, like computer science as a whole, which I think is awesome because I think computer science is cool. I taught myself how to code when I was like in high school, college-ish.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I got like there's a website that I forget, it was like a free like course, and I got HTML certified and CSS certified.
That's really good. Good
Yeah,
job.
and I really liked it, and it was fun, and I liked it because then when I got into the classroom, like that was something else I could put on my resume, and like block coding's a lot easier than straight up HTML, CSS coding. So that was always nice because I'm like, well, if I ever have to manipulate something like that, I can, but for the kids, it's gonna be easier to do all that stuff. So
Well, and I think it's so cool because I don't know. I know a lot of people that I talk to who aren't teachers, their perception of coding as a whole is the super complicated thing, which it is. It can be complicated. But when you talk to people, you're like, oh, yeah, we do coding at school. They're like, what? And we're all, okay. Like, they make programs that are made for kids to expose them so that it builds up to what they know coding as. So if you're thinking that too, if your perception, you're all, whoa, I don't know how to code. I do not either, but it's just a great way to expose kids to, because coding isn't going to go away. There's like more of a need of it more than ever, especially in their futures. So it's a great way to help kids find a new passion that they might not thought they have had, and help them think about the world in a different way, and also how computers work, because it isn't just this magical box that turns on. Something is
right.
happening. So they're really creating with technology, not just being a consumer and being passive and just playing video games all day.
Which I think that's a great way to word it. And like, so the question I ask you, if a teacher that's maybe listening to this, hopefully like you're like, hey, I've never heard of computer science. I'm not really like, how would you describe it? Maybe like in a sentence or two.
Computer science. I think
Yeah.
computer science is just understanding how computers work, like what's happening behind the screen. It's just how can you, like I just said, like being a creator, how can you
Yeah.
create with technology and change the world for good, and
Mm-hmm.
just how the world works. It's really understanding how our technology world works.
See, I like the way you word that too, because I feel like that's a good way to put it, and it's simple. Whereas like you hear the word computer science, I feel like people get a little nervous.
Yeah, they get nervous. And
Cool.
it's
Yeah.
so important. I mean, like life science is how life works, like how
Mm-hmm.
there's a life cycle. it's so important to understand like how computers work. Not every kid's going to be in a coding job.
Yeah.
However, most kids are going to have to use a computer and be computer literate in all of them. All of
Mhm.
them. It does not matter. Even when I worked at
Yes.
Jamba Juice as my first job, that's a smoothie place. I had to use a computer to do the point of sales. And then like the computers would go out. How do we fix this? That was just a hourly job and I had to use computers. So kids need to know that some computer literacy skills to get by.
Yes. I agree 100%. I feel like that's exactly why Hour of Code is so important, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited for you to talk about all your awesome activities because I feel
So
like I do some, but you're like this is like you're like I feel like I'm creative in this aspect, but you're like very creative. Like you'll be like, yeah, I did this, and like when we're talking beforehand, I'm like, that is so incredible. Like I never thought about that. So
I don't know. I think maybe it's part of it. I don't know how to code. So like can I make sense for it for me and it makes sense for the kids? Um, when you're getting started, like of course you could do this as a classroom teacher, or if you teach STEM or library, but I would not recommend just sending them out to the code.org and say, good luck, have fun, because it can get overwhelming really fast. There's so many different levels of coding when they have little baby kindergartners up to sixth grade. There's just so many options out there. So I highly recommend going through that. I have a blog post actually on this. So if you really want to see the breakdown of what I do K through 5 each day, we'll link that in the show
I'll
notes.
say we can link that. Yeah.
We'll link that. But there is such a variety of types of progressions of coding for kids. So definitely browse the site and check out what you think might work for them and how you're going to share that link. So you could share that specific link in Seesaw, Google Classroom, Schoology, whatever. And I usually just pick one or two coding games that I want them to focus on for the week or for the day. And then at home or for homework or like if you have a sub, that's a great time. Like, okay, now you can just explore code.org and try something you might not have tried. But it's good to kind of have all the kids working on the same thing because they can help each other. Because there's a lot of times like, wait, how do you do this one? How did you pass this level? And then I can help them. So just a word of caution, don't just send them open into the jungle of hour of code. It can get scary. But I also will do a mixture of coding, computer coding, and then unplug coding. So you don't need a computer to actually do hour of code. So you'll see that on the website. Unplug coding is basically coding without a device. So it's hands-on materials, which I still do. That's good to also have as a backup just in case if the internet goes out, because that might happen. um, so I'll do that. Either stations or whole group. Really, this is actually a great time for hour of code because yes, we want the kids to be collaborating. However, we can't really have them always share materials right now. So this is
Mhm.
actually perfect because they can all be engaged and involved in parallel code where they're all working kind of on the same task and help each other, but they're not necessarily touching the same stuff. So keep that in mind. There's a couple of like specific websites and apps I really, really like. Hopster Coding Safari is so good for kindergarten and first grade. It's a free app for iPads. I'm not sure if it works on other devices, but it's these cute baby animals that need to get to their mommies. And so then,
Aw.
yeah, it's so cute. And they have these cute little faces. And the kids have to drag the arrows to code the path. And then it gets to be a more of a challenge. There's like twins. So then there's twin baby animals that have to get to their mom. And so
I've
there's
never heard of this one, so this is new to me right now. I've never heard of the Hopster, so I'm downloading this on my kids' iPads for sure.
it's so cute and they love it. And it's really, really great. And it has a progression and they can download it at home. For slightly older, like first, like end of like this is a good time for first grade. First and second grade, Scratch Junior is also an app. It's not on the website as of right now, but if you go to their website, they have challenge cards that you can print for free. And the challenge cards go in order. The last time I did it, there was 9 challenges and I had a little sticker sheet and the kids would mark off when they completed a challenge. But each challenge builds off of each one so they understand how to use the coding blocks, how do the codes connect together, how to have loops and everything. So this one is like the great next progression. So Hopster Coding Safari, Scratch Junior free app. And then most of you might have heard of Scratch. You don't have to necessarily create an account for Scratch for the kids. It is free also. That one works better on the computers, actually. I've never tried it on the iPads, but it does work better on computers. I had before in my room, but it's worth looking into these Scratch coding cards. So it's a lot like the Scratch Junior ones I mentioned, but there's different challenges that, again, build off of each other, and they're little games. So what's cool is that my fourth and fifth graders like the coding cards, because what I found with Scratch is the kids will just do random stuff and like their codes don't do anything. And they just like make their characters spin in circles and make weird noises. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Kids have done that in my room, and I honestly thought about like adding that to my TPT store. I mean, I don't know what that would look like, but like coding cards would be
Mhm.
a great thing to search on TPT. I mean, for sure.
I think so too, because the kids like, I understand the importance of exploring a tool and trying it out. I think that is very important.
Mhm.
However, there is a time I think kids need to be successful and learn how to use the tool. And coding
Right.
is I wouldn't say it is hard, but it's not always intuitive once you learn the language of the
Mhm.
platform. So the coding cards are good because it does guide them step by step, and they do have to find where the blocks are. So I
Right.
do recommend using something with directions. A lot of the code.org things too give them directions of what they need to do. So that's super, super helpful. And then if your kids are experienced in implementing the Makey, connects with Scratch. And I know you love Makey Makeys. I think we talked about
We
it
do 'em.
in our
Yeah.
another episode.
Yeah. That's what we use, Scratch and Makey like hand in hand. And there's even like a Makey website, like little dashboard that has Scratch projects.
Hmm.
So that's something too you could probably do with those for sure.
Yeah. Remotely, if you're a remote, I actually just got an email today from Google CS First, so Google Computer Science First. Side note, I love using their curriculum for clubs, after school clubs, but they just sent out a resource for unplugged ideas. So you could do that remotely, have kids print that out, do it as a whole group. I have a human robot station that's really fun for the little kids. I'll do that in person remote, but they're my little robots and I'll be their computer programmer. And then they have to follow you guys, I like little cute things. This is just how it goes. But they have to read the program of the cards I hold up and do the actions. There's one similar on code.org. It's cup coding. And the kids just need like 10 cups and they have to either follow the code you give them to build a design. So you could do that when you're teaching remotely or in person.
Right. Sweet. So I love all those different ideas for sure. And one thing that we talked about beforehand that we felt is important that we're going to kind of talk about next is those skills and basically like we're kind of trying to tell you why we think this is important, why we think it's important to teach, and the different skills your kids are going to kind of obtain. So I'll probably kind of go through this list and Naomi will probably help add to it because, like I said, she has done this for a while too, as far as computer science. And I feel like we both do fun things in our rooms that we get to teach these different skills and the kids love them too. And I love the unplugged activities. So I'm glad that you talked about those because those are like my favorite thing to do.
Me too.
For sure. And I think the kids like it too because they feel like they're learning something kind of new, but they're doing something that's hands-on,
Mhm.
which they're used to in our rooms, especially. So the first thing that like always stood out in my mind when I went to my first computer science conference was order of operation and how important that is. So, one of the videos I show the kids and things we talk about is, if you're making a peanut butter jelly sandwich, you couldn't put peanut butter on both sides of the bread and then slap it onto bread and put both sides of the jelly. There's an order to do things. Same thing with tying your shoes, getting from one place to the next. But then the kids will also say, well, you could change it slightly. And yeah, in computer science, you can change things slightly to see what happens. So I think getting kids to understand that there's a point A to point B and there might be some wiggle room inside there, like the order of operations is so crucial and it's a awesome skill for them to learn. And really it helps with math too, order of operations math.
Yep.
So that's why I think that one you kind of double dip as far as curriculum, which we are all about here at the Innovative Teacher Podcast.
Yep.
Like we're always thinking like how many subjects can we fit into like this lesson,
Yes.
and we talk about that all the time, whether we're on the podcast or just talking in general. The next one that we kind of talked about was reverse engineering. And I think this one is one of my favorite things to teach too. So I really like the reverse engineering aspect. So like for code.org, it might give them a finish like board sometimes, or like a finished like product, and they'll be like, oh, why did the bird, go over here when he should have went over here? So you kind of got to figure out, well, what happened. So you got to think opposite of what you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
Am I saying that right?
Yeah, it's like
I
when you
feel like I'm
go
saying
to
that
a restaurant and you have a really good meal and you think about all the ingredients that went in
right.
it, so you can make it at
Ooh,
home. It's that. I don't know if
I
you're gonna
like
cook,
that.
but it's like
I've never heard that, and I like that. That's better than what I said,
that's reverse engineering.
and it's delicious too, the way you said it. My way was like, nah, it's cool.
I always
Sure.
talk about food, I think, with all my examples. I just love eating.
It's well, it's relatable. That's why I tell the kids, like, I do the same thing with, like, I'll do that, or like something I like, and I'm like, to me that's relatable. But yeah, so reverse engineering is something that's super important, and the kids love learning about it. That abstract thinking, so thinking about something when there's not necessarily something they can see yet. So if they have, at least on code.org and Scratch, they have like a little spot where they can code. They kind of got to think from what's going to happen here, and they got to think, oh, it's going to happen, but I can't necessarily see it yet. So it's one of those things where if we related it to food again, maybe you're thinking about the end product of your food, but you're putting all the ingredients in the bowl.
Yes.
With the way would kind of be the way I would word it. And that is really hard for kids to picture at a young age, but I feel like it's something that you can work on and they grow at. Like I've seen kids personally like be able to pick on that a lot younger in my fourth year, because I'm probably teaching a little bit better than my first year.
I 100% agree because this is my third year in STEM. I have seen just the way they think about problems in general and attack them. I totally agree. Is completely different than what it was 3 years ago. Just
Hmm.
look
And
at
it
us.
seems like I mean, we're living in an ever changing world where that's changing too, and they're changing with it, which is
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Next skill, visualization. So they're able, and I mean, that's kind of like the same thing, but just a little bit different. They have to kind of visualize what they're doing. Those different, at least for older kids in Scratch, those different like components and how things are going to move about in a game they're building, or maybe they're just building like a little, like I have kids sometimes on Scratch build like cards, like they can build like animation cards, which they think is cool. And it's something that's easy for them to build, maybe if they're beginning. So that visualization for sure is something that I think is also very important. I actually added after we're done talking this, Naomi,
Oh,
but the lingo and language I think is
that's good.
important
Yes. Yes.
because like they have to know like binary digits, code. What does that word mean? I actually have my kids, and it's on my TPT store, do like these computer science puzzles.
Oh,
And
cool.
so they're like little puzzles, and they have to use binary digits to figure out what they are. Like it'll say 001 below,
Oh,
1001, and our little chart here is S. So it kind of gets them used to referencing those numbers and figuring that out. And it also kind of teaches them how to organize those different thoughts. So the lingo and language, I think, is super important because I never really realized how important it was, because like since I kind of knew how to code before,
mhm.
I just assumed, like, you just assume
Yeah.
people know things, which is always hard to teach those things.
Well, and it's that vocabulary development, like when you're teaching reading or even math, like you said, there are specific words that you need to know, like in that language, just like when you're learning like coding is a language. Like
Yeah.
it is a there are different coding languages. So I
Hmm.
will do the same thing depending on what it is. I have a little word wall that I have with like different coding words that we'll go over. But word walls I have a place in STEM too. Like I know.
And
Um,
that's, and I love that you said that too, that it's like a whole nother language, because like even like I know HTML and CSS, I know a little bit of Java, but like I don't know that whole language, which I think is really cool to think about, because some of those kids, like my one friend who's in the computer science field, he's fluent in like 8 or 9 different computer science languages, where he can
wow.
just use them. He doesn't really have to think about it. It's just in his head, which is phenomenal. Because that's a lot of them, but there's even more than that. And he said there's always new ones that are coming out with different speeds and different, effects on computers. And that's cool to think about, because like the kids, that's going to affect them.
Oh,
I think for
you'd
sure.
be cool to talk to on the podcast. Let's remember that.
I know that's true, and he's like a real quiet guy, so he would be like, "Yeah, I know, like I know languages," but
Oh.
he wouldn't say much. But it would be cool to I mean, talk to someone that would be fluent in a lot of those. I think because I think kids think it's cool. I think it's cool just to hear them,
Mhm.
see what they know.
Oh, definitely. Have you had any kids, like that stuck out to you that coding just was the right fit for them? Have you seen that
Yes,
with your
so
kids?
I'm excited about this because I love a good success story. I'm like the Disney movies where the underdog's in the beginning and you know he's gonna win, but you're like, what? That's my sweet spot right there. I like those movies.
Yes,
Um,
me too.
and so I'm like, this is the perfect segment. So there's a kid that stuck out to me that my first year he like really, really struggled. My first year at my school, they didn't have Chromebooks. There was computer labs. And I'm like,
Oh, mine did too.
this is old school right here. And they actually ended up getting Chromebooks the next year. I introduced code.org and like to him. And then I actually ended up introducing him to Scratch. And he was in second grade at the time. And he had like a Scratch studio. He spent hours and hours building these games. And they were like really good. Like I was like, I honestly know like I can maybe do it, but it would take me probably months. And like he's like, yeah, I just sit down. I do this all the time. And like
Oh.
he's a really sweet kid, but he's the kind of kid that he has problems working with others
Mhm.
and he's getting better. But I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, I don't worry about that kid because I
Yeah,
know that he's going to be a computer programmer. And
yeah,
a lot of those fields, they work completely alone. No one works with them. They just kind of like, hey, here's what you need to program and what you need to do. And he's great at it. Like he'll show me his studio he has on Scratch. He's built like 10 to 12 games, and some of them gotten kind of popular on Scratch. And he got excited because he wasn't the only one playing them; other people were playing them.
yeah,
So I'm like, well, maybe that'll help with his communication
yeah.
skills. So it was just kind of cool to kind of come into school and see a kid that like not necessarily teachers didn't like, but they always be like, oh, I'm gonna have problems with him. He's gonna be difficult to other students. He's smart, but he doesn't like, necessarily latch onto something. He like latched onto coding and like still to this day when he's in my class when we're building, he'll be like, can I code? And I'm like, if you get done with your project, that's something we'll do, and that causes him to work hard in school too, which is cool to see. And I tell him all the time, like, you'll be a great programmer someday. So it
Oh,
makes me excited. It makes me feel
cool.
all warm and fuzzy.
Oh, that's so good. I can't wait to like hear, like, hopefully I can hear like what happens later.
Yeah, I know. So I'm hoping when he graduates, I told him, I'm like, you're gonna have to write your favorite STEM teacher some checks. Is what I was telling him, just laughs. So what
My
about you?
My kid is kind of similar. Now I did not expose him. His is actually scratched too, which is funny. We did not talk about these stories beforehand, but
Hmm.
it kind of similar. Like he already knew Scratch, and this was my first year teaching STEM, and I love clubs. And I wanted to do a coding club. Well, he already had experience, and this was like an intro club, and it was the only one I was going to do. And so he really, really wanted to come. I'm like, you probably already know everything, but I'd love to have you. So what ended up happening is he was the only fifth grader that signed up, and the rest were like third and fourth graders. And so what ended up like kind of evolving and same kind of thing, a little awkward, kind of has a harder time talking to kids, but he ended up being like a mentor to them during my
That is
club.
awesome.
Yeah, he knew way about more. He same thing, knows way more
Yeah.
about it than I do, codes at home. So he ended up being a mentor, and it was cool for him to have that leadership role just because he normally isn't seen as a leader in his classroom. However, the
Mhm.
kids started asking him questions. And then, oh my gosh, like makes me want to cry. On the last day, he like brought in business cards with his name and his phone number. And he's like, hey, if any of you guys want to get better at Scratch or have like a coding play date, here's my number. I would love to hang out with you guys.
Aw, and like that's cool because like he was
Yeah.
like, I mean, a little socially awkward and maybe
Yeah.
misunderstood would probably be the right word. And
Yeah.
it's like, maybe he made a friend doing that.
I
And I feel like that's what makes those
know.
clubs cool and coding cool.
I know. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so sweet. And like, it was just like really cool to see him shine. And he would like show the kids a project, like something like he made. And yeah, so I haven't seen him in a little while. I hope he's doing okay. But Yeah, one of those
That's
things you're like, you're gonna be fine.
yeah.
There's something for you.
Those are the kind of stories that teachers love to hear. It just makes your teacher heart happy, is what I
I know it's
always
like
say.
why we do it.
Yeah,
Those
exactly.
things. But we had a great time with this episode, probably longer than most, but we really loved this topic and had a really good time. We really highly suggest Hour of Code. Make sure to follow us, subscribe to our podcast and review just to spread the word to other people. Also, if you're interested in collaborating with us in a bigger way, whether it's an interview, marketing opportunities, have us present at your school, send us an email at innovativeteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We have some schools that we're already chatting with and getting booked up for the spring already. So we would love to have you guys on our list, and we can go deeper into topics that your school is interested in and help spread the word. But definitely, connect with us on social media, our Patreon. We love connecting with you guys. This is why we do this every week. We're so passionate about what we do, and we appreciate you all, innovative teachers. We will see you in the next episode.